I'm Bill from CJ Pony Parts. While the IRS and the S550 Mustang is a huge plus, a lot of people forget the 05 through 14 is an excellent chassis with a 3-link to make it into a really good handling car. Now what we're going to do today, we've got Angel here from Pedders Suspension, which Pedders is a company you may not be familiar with, but trust me, if you lived in Australia, you would definitely know their name as they are huge down there. Tell us about this kit you brought along, you're going to install, and tell us about the company a little bit.
Well, thank you, Bill. Pleasure to be here. We're a 60-year-old company, a household name in Australia, as you mentioned. We do everything under car related, so we're suspension specialists and nothing else. The kit I have here today fits the 05 to 14 Mustang, and it's a great way to sort of turn your daily driver into a more capable package, or just to get the look you want, the stance.
And when you brought this kit in, I remember looking at it, I asked you where the hardware package is because it looked like this couldn't be everything, but you guys use basically a lot of the Ford stuff to make it a pretty simple installation.
Yeah, very simple installation. Anything that is required to be changed is included, but for the most part, it's really just a remove and replace scenario.
And tell us about, let's start with the suspension in the front here. Tell us about this front strut assembly here.
Well, they're 30-way adjustable, and critically, the height adjustment is done here at this lower clevis, so you don't sacrifice any of your travel.
Okay, now this is set up out of the box, or do you want to
adjust that? This is really our sort of recommendation as a base setting, the way they come out of the box. Now, you're free to go lower if you'd like, mess around with the damping, but as they come out of the box, it should be a fairly, it'll be a bit lower, but it's not going to be into the fenders or anything like that, and it should be really nice.
So if you want that look, obviously you have a lot of space
you can go
but you're going more for look and performance, the whole package,
and a true balance
out of the box.
Yes, striking a good handling balance without beating you up.
Okay, and about the rear now, tell us about this. So you're going with a, looks like a replacement shock and then a perch mount.
Yes. Yeah, being with the divorce setup there, we run this perch here, and that's where we achieve our height adjustment in the rear.
And then it's adjustable on car as well.
It is. It's a bit tricky there, but as long as you've unloaded the rear, you can just loosen the locking collars and run that up.
And again, is that something you want to measure before you install, or is that good to go out of the box?
That would be good to go as it is. Again, if you're following our recommendations. Okay. But if you were going to change the height, then yeah, I would still start as a baseline, take your measurements, and then go back in there.
Okay, and what kind of adjustments do we have on the rear shocks?
The 30-way, just like in the front.
So just like the front full through.
Exactly.
And design to work, do you have a sway bar kit you have offer for this? Are there components available
We do, yeah, and I'm sure I'll be here again in the not too distant future doing the sway bars. But yeah, the sway bars have actually released this month, so they're available as
Okay, now with this kit, I know you guys do offer a caster camber plate kit for this car. We're going to do an installation on that in the future, but do you need it? Can you actually run it without it? If you
No, it's entirely up to the individual and what they're going to do with the car. So I mean, if they feel they're going to go a bit lower or maybe track the car a bit and run more aggressive tires, R-comps, then they'll probably want a little more camber up front, and in that case, it's perfect for them. But if it's somebody who just wants to throw on the suspension and enjoy 90% of the benefits, they're not needed by any means.
Again, we're talking about the front, you're giving a whole bolt-on kit, which is really nice. Now, one issue that plagues these cars is the front mount. They become an issue, the strut mount itself. What is your solution with that? What are you using?
Well, these obviously come out with a billet aluminum plate from the factory, or from the way we provide them, and then there's a bearing in here to avoid any sort of stiction. So you still get smooth steering articulation.
Setup than you would find on the factory
and it's not going to fail at anything close to that sort of weight. I mean, if anything wears over time, it'll be these bearings, and they're easily replaced.
Okay, well, excellent. So get started with the installation.
All right, sounds great.
For this installation, that a lift and a pole jack or a jack and jack stands, 1/4-inch ratchet, 10mm socket, 3/8 ratchet, 5/16 socket, 12mm socket, 13mm socket, 15mm socket, 18mm socket, 19mm socket, 5mm Allen key, 6mm Allen key, torque wrench, 18mm wrench, 19mm wrench, panel removal tool, hammer, and a tape measure. Since we have Angel here from Pedders, I'm going to let him handle the installation. I'll just give him some assistance. We're going to start up top here by loosening these bolts and then go down underneath and remove the whole strut assembly as a whole, since the Pedders is a complete replacement.
All right, we're going to remove 3 of these bolts and leave the 4th one in place to support the assembly while we go below and take out the remainder. All right, we're going to start by removing this 10mm bolt that holds the clip for the brake line behind the strut. Get that out of the way. All right, next we're going to remove the 18mm nut that secures the sway bar end link. All right, and we're going to use a soft blow mallet just to tap this out and get it free. Now Bill's kind enough to put this jack underneath the spindle to support the strut, so when we remove these, it won't just crash to the ground. We're going to go now to these 18 mil bolts that secure the strut to the spindle and remove those. All right, now that we've removed the lower 18 millimeter bolts to the spindle, we're ready to remove that last bolt up top and remove the strut assembly. You want to support this with your hand so it doesn't drop away. All right, we're going to use a panel trim remover to take this plastic rivet out that locates the ABS sensor. And now we can remove the strut. And now that we've removed the strut and gotten it out of the way, we can get much better access to this lower sway bar mount. So we'll remove that next. And this again will be an 18 millimeter, just like the struts. Now it's basically the reversal of the process we just used to take everything off. So we're going to start by putting the shortened sway bar bracket on. Now, not all of the models have this reference point, but just be sure to line this up with the outside or the spindle side of the strut before you go to install it. Now, we're going to do the same as we did earlier and just have one of these nuts here to retain this initially and hold it in place. All right, Bill's assisting me here, lifting the spindle with the jack so I can get these strut holes lined up a little closer. Bill, can you go up a little bit more? One more time and we should be good. All right, and I'll start by putting in the lower one, which is generally a little easier, and then we can pivot the top one into place. Bill, just a little bit more, I'm sorry. There we go. All right, now we'll replace the lock nuts on the back side. All right, now we're going to replace the hardware for the brake line bracket. And whereas the factory comes with a screw, we use a nut and a bolt. All right, now at this point, because we've only done one side of the car, there's no way this is going to be made to work. So I'm going to go up on top and tighten these back, and we'll revisit this connection. All right, now we're going to reinstall the last 3 bolts up here that retain the strut and tighten those down. Now these bolts are pretty sensitive to their torque value, so we want you to torque them down to about 40 foot-pounds. Now you'll just repeat this process on the other side and then we can mount the sway bar. All right, now Bill was kind enough to disconnect the other side of the sway bar so I can move this link back into position and connect it properly. Now the final step before reinstalling the wheels on this side is to reconnect this ABS sensor. And just pop it through, it's a plastic rivet. All right, and now we're ready to move on to the rears. All right, at this point we've moved on to the rear. And the first step is to peel back this carpeting, pop the plastic rivets out and pull it back so you can gain access to this nut on top of the shock, which is what we're going to remove next. Now we'll move back underneath. All right, now that we're underneath the car, the first thing you want to do is support the rear, and then we're going to disconnect the sway bar, which will allow it to drop away so we can gain access to these lower bolts of the shock, because otherwise it runs right in front of them and you can't get them. All right, now we're going to take the sway bar link off, the 15 millimeter. All right, and move on to the other side. All right, here we are on the other side, doing the exact same thing and removing the upper sway bar link. And that will allow the bar now to drop away so we can get these lower shock mounts. We're going to take a 15 mil and remove this lower shock bolt. Now we're going to remove the bolt, carefully secure the shock so it doesn't fall on your feet, and it'll be ready to slide out. All right, I didn't mention this earlier, but you want to remove this top mount and lower assembly from the factory shock absorber because this is going to be transferred over to the coilover setup in the rear. All right, to transfer that upper shock mount, you're just going to back this nut off and slide the factory hardware down over it. So it rests on that washer. Then now go on top. Now I'm doing this just to illustrate how they go back together because I'll have to put it through the body before I can do this. And you simply thread that back in place. All right, we're going to start by lowering the axle assembly so we can remove the spring. We loosen the sway bar so we can get this extra droop back here. On it. Thank you. Yep. All right, and you can see here with that we've left the factory isolator in place in the bottom. There's also one at the top. You're going to want to leave those both in place to avoid any unwanted noise and vibrations. All right, and now we're ready to slide the replacement coil spring and perch into place and lift the axle back up. All right, now we're ready to slide the shock back into place. So we're going to slide it up through the upper hole in the body and then run the bolt through the bottom again. And replace the locking tab. And now we're ready to move back into the trunk to finish the upper mounts. All right, since we've got the car up in the air, we're going to put the sway bar back in place just to serve as a support for this rear so we can move back to the top and put the upper strut mount back on. Now you may need to jack up the rear assembly to get this to fall back in place, this bushing here. But now we're ready to put the top mount back on. And now you can thread the adjusting assembly back in. And using a 19mm wrench, you can just snug that assembly up. Just hand tight, not very tight at all. Now you're ready to put the factory carpet back in place. We'll repeat the same procedure for the other side and make a few adjustments to get the ride height where we want.
So we put the car down on the ground. The front was exactly where the owner wanted. He said nice and tucked up right on the fender line, but the rear was sitting a little bit high. So how do we adjust the rear? Well, I guess the front adjusts the same way with these collars.
Yeah, pretty much. We're going to loosen this lower collar here, and that'll allow us to back this one down. In the case of this car, since we've already done our initial measurements, we're going to back this all the way down.
Because he wants it low, so we're going to drop it down.
All right, as I said earlier, you're going to start by loosening this lower collar, taking the tension off of it relative to the one above it.
Now you said in our case, we're just going to lower it all the way down, but if you weren't, I'm assuming you could use a depth gauge, all kinds of different things in there to get that measurement to make sure it's the same size.
A small socket, something just to give you a reference so they're even side to side.
Gotcha.
And as you can see, because it's at droop, there's not a whole lot of tension on this anymore, so it's relatively easy to spin. Now up front, if you were to change the adjustment, you're going to loosen this collar here and literally just spin these down so you can retract this threaded piece down into the body and that would lower it, or go the other direction to raise it. And then lock the collar back again, you're ready to go. Now in the case of both ride height and damping, the kits come out of the box with our sort of baseline recommended settings. In this case, we're running 24 clicks out of 30 towards full soft. And there's literally detents. So with each click, you've made another step of adjustment. And it's rebound and damping are coupled together, so whenever you make an adjustment, they're both adjusted to suit at the same time. So simply turn it left to reduce the stiffness, right to increase it. And the rear is the exact same setup. Same sort of knob situated on top of the shock with the same number of detents and the same adjustment method.
Now, obviously, that's a huge difference from where we started. I mean, this car was lower before, but on stock struts, it didn't ride real well. Well, now we get the low look and the performance to go with it.
Indeed, and critically, we've retained our travel, both in the spring and the shock, because of the design of the lowering mechanism. This, coupled with the dampening adjustment, allows the end user to pretty much adjust it to suit his needs and his uses.
And the installation overall, honestly, this is easier than doing springs because it's assembly. So it should be 2 to 3 hours top. Be back on the road in no time. Angel, thanks again for coming out.
Thanks
Appreciate
for having
the help
me.
with the installation and the quality product.
Pleasure. Thank you.